like you. How exciting is that? Tips and tails. And we have two of the most seasoned individuals in this space, Miss Regina Glenn and Nancy Locke. So I wanted to just say hello, ladies. Thank you for joining us today.
Hello.
And before we get into the project, I wanted to first introduce the four individuals that are part of Tabor, faces you've seen many, many times, who really brought this to you. So, Mr. Henry Yates, I don't see your camera, but we need you to say hello. Thank you for all that you do. He's the lead of public relations.
Hello. I was faceless there for a minute,
Thank you, Henry.
but not voiceless.
So, Henry, what was your vision for this? You guys all had a vision for what this was going to do. What, you want to start a presentation with the end in mind. Let's start with the end in mind. Henry, I'm putting you on the spot. This was not planned, clearly.
You're not supposed to be asking questions like this. This is not in the script.
Why did you have these beautiful ladies here? Why did you say that these are the smartest ladies and I need to bring these people to Tabor? Come on, give it to us. And I'm going to ask you, George and Patricia, the same question.
Our vision for this was to provide good information to folks that are either looking to be consultants, already are consultants, or are associated in one way or another with the consulting business. I personally, as a consultant, made a whole bunch of mistakes that a session like this could have avoided and saved me a lot of grief. So that was my vision for this, and I think other members of the committee agreed.
I love it. George Frost is also a consultant. He was very emphatic that we needed to do this work. George, why was it so important that we bring this to Tabor members?
Well, you guys know I wrote an article about Black businesses matter, and I'm really concerned. I know that Black businesses have a lot of struggle. All minority businesses and small businesses have some struggle, but I thought something like this would really help Black businesses, any minority businesses, period, that are trying to get off the ground, and some still struggling, maybe been in business for a while. And the coronavirus situation doesn't help. But they didn't have Regina and Nancy. They're very seasoned people, and they know both sides of the coin.
Love it.
The owner, they understand the owner representatives as well as the consultant side, and I think that's a very important thing.
I love it. So it sounds like we're going to be in for a treat today. Miss Patricia, you're the last one besides Ray, who may or may not turn his camera on. So Ray, you tell me. Ray is the backbone of everything technological at Tabor 100. So Ray, thank you for all that you do. Miss Patricia, why was this important to you? You're also a consultant. Why was this important to you?
This is just important to me because Regina and Nancy are just such leaders in this, and the perspective they bring to Black business owners, ethnic business owners, I think is really, really important, so that we actually have that opportunity to really connect in places and build relationships that we need to build to be viable. And I wrote the last article sort of as a companion piece to George's for this last Tabor newsletter about why it's important to support Black and ethnic owned businesses. So I'm super excited to learn and so inspired by these two ladies. Thank you.
Me too. Ray, I have to say thank you for all that you do. And like I said, this wouldn't be happening without the genius and technological support of you. Anything you want to say besides get me off the camera and stop talking to me?
Ready to get this started.
All right, let's do it. So for those who are watching, we're recording this, as you might imagine. This is meant to be a resource. They're going to give you so much information today. There's no way you're going to digest it all. I know Regina, I spent 10 minutes on a phone call with her. I'm still recovering, right? It was amazing. It was like, oh my goodness, links and resources. So this is going to be recorded for you. And we want you to ask questions. So we do have the chat open. So, and the Q&A is open. So in the Q&A, put any questions you have. Patricia's going to be monitoring that for us. So bring those questions up, and we're going to have Regina first go to her presentation. Then we're going to have Nancy go to her amazing presentation. And then we're going to open it up to questions. But don't wait to enter your questions. Ask them in the chat as they come up, because we expect to go through a lot of information. So are we ready? Awesome. So I know a little bit about Regina, but I'm going to let her introduce herself because she has such an amazing way of doing it. Miss Regina Glenn. Thank you.
Hi, hello everyone. It is a pleasure as a Tabor member over the decades. It has been a pleasure and an honor to be with you. If you will pull up that first slide, it tells you a little bit about myself. The first one says being better. If you go back to that very first one, the cover, being better in business, tips to accelerate your success. First definition of success is a holistic definition. You'll see not just the profit, not just signing a deal, but that you are a whole person with a full life and still making a profit. Next slide. So I think it's so important, as I tell you who I am, this is the routine. I believe it's so important. Tip number one, when you are working with somebody on a team, when you are working, of course, with your coworkers, when you are stalking down a lead and you get an individual, try to find out who they are. And here are some of the aspects. Where are they from? I was born in New York City, and I bring with me that total acceptance of diversity because it was everywhere, and a fast talking, fast paced, in your face kind of style. Took me 45 years to figure out it may not work in the Northwest. They may have to tone it down. I'm a devoted parent, and that's important to know where we put our real bottom line emphasis. Are they interested in family and what have you? I have a very strong base education. So I'm faith-based personally, but I came from parochial schools where it was about speaking, reading, and conceptualization. And it was emphasized always that you write well, you read well, and you connect the dots. So debate was one of my favorite areas to excel in. And then what kind of experience are they giving you advice from? Like today, my tips come from a person who has worked in all three sectors. I have been in the public sector, working for the city of Tacoma, other jurisdictions, city of Seattle. I've been in the private sector with Continental Telephone Company in my consultancy, and I've been in the nonprofit as vice president for the Chamber of Commerce in Seattle. And so what do? Who is she? She, me, Regina, for over 2 decades, decided to take all that wealth of experience and focus it in 4 areas. Marketing, can sell and help clients sell products and concepts. And then organizational training, understanding the undergirding that are in an organization and how to make them the best they can be at that. And then community engagement, which is not just knowing people, but being very much intricately a part of helping them reach their goals. And diversity has that all-encompassing word. That became later in my career. Would you help us with diversity and inclusion? And so that has now become a dominant part. Next slide. And so more about what I do and where I'm at. So I said I worked in those 3 sectors. It's important when you're talking to somebody to find out when they did work someplace else, what did they do? So I was assistant to the city manager in the city of Tacoma. And that was back in the day when they never had a person of color in the fire department. And so they were about to get sued. And so the city created a position called the civil service coordinator, and that worked out of the city manager's office. And my job was to see why we didn't have more people of color in, especially Black men, in the fire department. Well, coming fresh rather than in those days, back in the 70s, I was amazed because every fire department I saw was dominated with people of color in the East Coast. So that experience was the first eye-opener for me. The next thing, I went for the state. Retirement systems, that's when they were combining the pension systems all into one big system. And then city of Seattle. Charlie Royer was mayor, and I was the head of his Department of Licenses and Consumer Affairs. Then I went to the private sector to take all these tools and apply them as the public affairs directors for the 6 states in the mountain region. And then I said, hey, it's time to see if I can get the news of what we're doing in the Northwest into people's hands. So I created a newspaper, Diversity Business News, that ran with Puget Sound Business Journal and did its own thing. Next slide. So that's a background. So that would tell you, if you were meeting me for the first time, that's a person that seemingly has a viewpoint from either side. So if you were a client, I should be empathetic to what you're doing because I've been in the private sector. You're a small business, I can understand because I'm running a small business. So after all these years, I consider my skills are, I'm a strong public speaker, especially when you can be in the audience and see each other. If we were all together now, I would be checking you out in the room and I would be seeing who's dozing and kind of zero in and like to be able to feel that you are part of what we're saying. I'm a journalist, an advocate, and an advocate for the right causes for the right clients. I will advocate for some primes that could do better, but I'm hanging with them and making sure they don't get beat up too bad. But I'm an advocate for the small businesses saying we've waited long enough. A collaborator. That's really important in this great collaborative Pacific Northwest. There is a value for congeniality and getting along here. Sometimes it's prized even more than excellence. Think about that. Being a collaborator. And then organizational strategist. Okay, how are we going to go about it? And then a community connector. If you can bring them together, you'll have more power in that grouping. Next slide. So imagine if you knew all those things about a person, you are so empowered to get the best from them and actually give them the best. Now this slide is interesting. I've been saying tips from the get-go, as they say. I got an email from
I just need the link that you had sent to me.
You're fine.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's good information.
okay, I can hear you talking there.
I'm gonna try to mute whoever that was. So give me a second.
No problem. It was getting interesting though. So tips proven over the decades. So I got an email from me and Rice. This picture that you see with the yellow around it was a excerpt from a little booklet that the port put together. They were featuring 22 years ago their small businesses, and there I was being featured, and as always I had something to say, right? So my tips were bond with your accountant and your lawyer and your IT manager. Back in the day, we knew that this technology was coming, not necessarily to the degree it is now, but we knew it was coming. That's so important. If you do not have an accountant that understands how to keep you financially solvent, and most of all, how to work with your taxes, you are in trouble. And if you have a lawyer that helps you look at those contracts and understand what you're saying you're going to do, and you need the Ray Bradleys of the world to help you get through your technology day. The other thing is that you need to absolutely surround yourself with competent thinkers, writers, graphic designers. And here's the important part. The tip is they need to respect you and love you and will support you for at least 90 days without pay. Now, what does that mean? We sometimes don't get paid for 60 days, and that we need to understand if in fact there is a problem with the cash flow, how your colleagues and how those that are surrounding you are in need. This is such an integral part. I have colleagues that have worked with me over 30 years, and they hung with me for 90 days years ago. They hung with me for whatever assignment was there. And last, give praise and thanks, always. God first, to your colleagues, but most of all, don't forget, give yourself praise that you got through another day and you did it with grace, and you did it with determination. Next slide. And
Just a second.
no problem. I thought it was me.
Nope,
So-
that was me.
So as I was sharing with you, that it's important to have that sense of gratitude at all times. Now, one of the things that concerned me was that we as small business sometimes don't realize that running this business, this is one of the biggest tips to help you grow. Running the business, making a profit is just a small piece of what you do. So you want to do things that stimulate your mind. If you got this down to a routine, you could do it in your sleep. Think about that. Now, how stimulating is that? Continuing education for business owners is critical. Every 3 years, I would go to a formal training of sometimes for 6 weeks or 5 weeks or 9 weeks, whatever. The National Minority Supplier Development Council has an advanced management program that I went to through NMSDC, and it's called the Kellogg program at Northwestern University. Then the Kennedy School of Government, for those of you who have worked with governmental agencies or were governmental officials at any time, the Kennedy School of Government, they have a state and local government program that's outstanding. And then can you move the screen up a little bit, go down the next link there. There you, and then the Odyssey is a program that is a special program that we pull together, and a woman who has a company pulled it together who's PR. It's about women in business and women who are leaders, and it was a stimulant. My point here, the tip is go back and get continuing education on your skills. The last one should say Mind Valley. My screen, pardon me?
Is it not showing for you? It's showing full screen for me.
Excellent. So Mind Valley ties in with, if you see those multicolor boxes, it says quality of life. Mind Valley is a program, and I share that as a tip. On your own, Google that word, and what you'll find is this fabulous link to a program that has a platform of hundreds of training programs that you can develop and you can use any time of the day. That's what I like about it. They have a university. I'm always signed up in some course, but what you're seeing on your screen now where it says quality of life, spiritual life, health, all these 12 areas are in one of their programs called Life Book. I commend it to you. This particular one is a 6-week program, and they go through each and every one of these so that when you finish, you have a full rounded picture of what it takes to be successful, to be grounded in so many areas that you might not think about if you get so all engaged in the bottom line profit motivation. And then the next slide, strategically joining. It's one thing to be a card carrier, but you need to be engaged. I jumped at the opportunity to be part of this because, for one reason, they asked. If Ollie calls and asks, I said, okay, because I am committed to be engaged. So Table 100 is one of the best jewels you can have. You get out of it what you put in it. You learn about your coworkers when you work on a project like this. Those Tabor members that put this presentation together, they have a relationship connection that will help them in any other endeavor they do. Office of Minority Women Business Enterprise. If you are not certified, you should be. It's another area to be strategically a member of for so many reasons. You become a value added to a prime contractor that wants to get points to win a contract because they used us because we were a woman, a minority, that they have made a commitment to use. But beside that, OMWBE, they have some wonderful seminars and they have the right price. They're free. And there's no reason not to be there. The next one is National Association of Minority Contractors, the West Coast chapter. They have them all over the country. That's a value added about that. That's a national membership. It's not and the same as, and it's not competition with what you're doing at Tabor. It's an extension of what you need to know as a business owner. They have programs, but again, their national scene is very interesting. Then the Northwest Mountain Minority Supplier Development Council, it's another organization that is nationally known and it is international. If you needed to do business with someone that's in Chicago, there's a council member that can hook you up. I can call Fernando Martinez, who's the president of our Northwest Council, and say, hey, I got a deal going with someone in Minnesota. Hook me up. He'll talk to the president of the Minnesota Council. They'll find out the council members that are there. It's just like you're an active member. Rotary and other organizations like that. Rotary International is just what it says. It's an international collection of businesses, but it tells you a lot about the world of the majority clients. Predominantly white men and women make up Rotary, and in the specific Rotaries that Seattle happens to have one of the largest Rotaries in the United States, the Seattle 4 out of Seattle. Bellevue, there are 5 Rotaries, and they make up the most powerful business persons, both East and West, if you even know what Rotary is. If you go to a Rotary luncheon, know these organizations. Next slide. Are you really ready to be a consultant? Let's think about it now. Where did you come from? If you've used to having a job, let me tell you 2 tips. You've got to have a high tolerance for ambiguity. That is, you don't know what's happening. And a low boiling point. You cannot get upset with everything that comes your way. Because in consultancy, it is the best ongoing crapshoot that you can get into. No matter what you do, you cannot be guaranteed you're going to win. Talk to me. Where were we 8 months ago, right? We're going high. We're in Seattle. We're kicking and taking numbers. We are on it in the Northwest. And what the heck happened? Whoa, that's life in the fast lane. And then everything else internationally that's going on and nationally, and add politics to it. Entrepreneurs were probably the best ready for this craziness because we've already been on the helicopter. Am I qualified? Do I have the experience and training? Next, am I organized enough to become a consultant? Now, I truly have been tested during this COVID time. I have to remember that this is not Saturday every day. I have to get up like I'm going to do something with somebody, and it is about the discipline. I am used to following a plan for a day. I'm used to making sure that my time is divided between billable, fun, and volunteering. If it's not in those pockets, I got to ask myself, do I like to network? If you don't like to talk to people, if you don't like to share and give, you got to think twice because it's a give and take world. It's always important to ask yourself, what are my next steps? And then the last great tip about being a consultant, when I was thinking of this, I always like to lead people with self-help information. You can learn more about these questions that I just asked you in this excellent copyrighted website, Billable at the Beach. I like the name right off the bat. If you can click on it, that particular link takes you to this all knowledgeable site. You see, it starts off with words I like, free and course. Those words just kind of ring for us, right? Build your I was going to read it, but it tells you things. Let me just say that. When you open this up, be sure that you have time. On the top, it tells you it's about their programs. It tells you all about testimonials, companies, and articles. I love tips that give you 6 things to do this, 5 things to do that, people who did it before. It all's there for you. I commend it. Next slide. If we get back to our presentation and then go to the next one, the last thing I want to share with, I walk my talk. In this day of technology, we have websites. Let me give you a lasting tip that your website is not a business card that stays static. You want to keep feeding it. This website, my count yesterday for the month of August was 2,300 hits, because this is an informational site. This website was built to show what our company has done, but also to be a resource for other local businesses to learn and connect with helpful information. Remember, if you network and you share and you collaborate, these are some of the things you do. What you see there is a screenshot of my webpage. The webpage is very highly interactive. It'll tell you what kinds of things we do. It tells you who we do it with, the methodology, almost everything you can think of. I've had people ask me, how can I do what you do? And then I show them. I said, well, let me show you the organizations that I join. It's under my community involvement. If you look at that, if you can see that second turquoise box that says featured programs, then you've got community involvement, and then you have all the others. Each one is, if you clicked it, it would link into the website. The very last one talks about race and cultural resources. In this day and age, I took anything that I've read about, as you can see, that deals with culture, not anything. I mean, things that have been vetted that we know about. I have many people say, well, what do we say about this? And how do we talk to folks about that? There's no one answer, but you want to be relevant with the times that you're in. I added this to the website, just like if you go back to the top of the screen of my webpage, you can see in the very end, I have a page for COVID. Anything about all the great tips they're telling us about loans, you click on my COVID-19 page, it'll take you to tips and tools, how to get money, what to do to be safe, etc. This is part of making sure that you give back. And if one last click, if you go back to my homepage and go to that community involvement one, it says what we do. These are the organizations that I am engaged with. And I share this when people say, I want to do, I'm interested in kind of stuff that you do. You need to not only join organizations, as you can see, I'm on the advisory committee for OMWBE. I'm a member of TABOR, a member of NAMAC, part of the founding member of Leadership Tomorrow out of Seattle, which was a very cool group. Each and every one of these links can show you to that organization. The last thing I have to say is May. And if you go back to the slide, the last slide, and it says, da-da-da-da, may the force be with you. The last tip, how to deal with the IRS if the small business has tax debt, will get you like a combination of crazy glue and quicksand. Do not mess with the IRS. And this link is hot. It'll take you to some tips. So I want the force to be with you and not IRS. Thank you.
Wow. That was incredible. Oh my goodness. Thank you, Regina. That was amazing. Perfect timing. We're halfway through, and we're halfway through the amazing individuals that are going to speak. Miss Nancy Locke. I'm going to let you also introduce yourself. Tell us who you are. I'm going to go to speaker view here. Tell us who you are, and I'll get ready to show your slides.
Good afternoon. It's very nice to be talking with some TABOR members, and very excited to be here talking about this. It's a topic I enjoy. I was the director for the City of Seattle Purchasing and Contracting Services Division, which that office runs the procurements and the consultant rules and regulations for how the city acquires consultants and other types of contracts. Prior to that, I had a similar role. I was a director in an office for the city of Linwood doing the same thing. Prior to that, I was at the state of Washington as a deputy director and Office of State Procurement, and the consultant work through A&E was also inside my umbrella. So I've had a number of years of seeing different formats and forums where they're making the selection process. So basically what I'm going to talk to you about is, like Regina had said, what do they say when you leave the room, after you've done your interview, after you've done your meeting, after you've done your sales pitch? What are they saying when they leave the room, when you leave the room? I don't know what each of you do or where your specialty lies, and if you wish to put it up in the Q&A segment, I will keep an eye there, and it will help me be a little more specific in my thoughts and advice to you. Next slide. So the challenge is real, and what I mean by that is, if you are a Black-owned firm, it is real. You are struggling with getting a footing, with becoming known, with creating trust. It is not there when you walk in the door. It is just the nature of Black-owned business, not only in our region, but as we know, in our country. And so do not feel alone in that, but we need to be realistic. We need to be real that that is in fact what's going on. And so much of what I'm telling you and sharing with you are things that I'm hoping will help put you on some even footing, or at least help you getting in the door, create the kind of credibility and trust which a lot of Black-owned firms really struggle with. If you're a woman-owned firm, I don't know, Jessica, if you're a woman-owned firm, but some of the same flavors go on, but there's some unique differences about trying to introduce yourself when you're a firm who's owned by a person of color. Next slide. So the most important step, thank you, Jessica. I just saw what you were doing. Okay. The most important step is to make sure you're chasing the right things. So I see firms who come in who are not, who don't have the experience, who don't yet have even a resume built, trying to chase work. You need to be very realistic about where you can be competitive, where are your strongest attributes, where are you going to be most appealing to a customer. That's the kind of work you need to go after. You need to be a scientist. And what I mean by that is, please be very, please examine in a very neutral way where your competitive sweet spot is. You have passion, you have some beliefs about where you can be strong, but you need to just examine it like a researcher so that you are in fact choosing the kinds of things that really are going to sell when you go out to market yourself. Or you're going to spend a lot of time chasing business that you're not going to be ready to compete for. So when you're meeting a client, a potential client, I at the city got a lot of cold calls from people, whether they came from Tabor or they heard about me from a third party. But I'd spend a lot of time meeting with people who wish to be potential consultants in the city. So you're out there, you're trying to market, you're meeting people, whether they're at trade show events or whether you're sitting in a virtual office trying to sell yourself. Who are you spending your time with? Who are you asking to sit across the table with you and dedicate their time to hear your pitch, right? You need to be very thoughtful to be sure that customer actually has a need for the service or has a likely interest in what you're about to sell. You also, what you are about to sell or market or pitch. Do they actually have money? So I would have people coming in the door to give me their marketing pitch, and they were beautiful. They did a wonderful job, but I don't have any money. I am not looking for this thing. I don't buy that type of product or service. And so not only is it hard for the public person sitting in the room to feel like they can do anything to be helpful, but you were spending your time with someone who cannot, who doesn't have any interest. And instead of walking away with a sense of mutual benefit, you could well have that potential client walk away thinking you don't know your sweet spot. So be very thoughtful about, do they actually have money? It's not to say that you can't create a relationship, which in turn can help you get to the right people. So, but just be thoughtful that that's your customer, that that's your purpose in meeting with that person, and be clear about that as you're meeting with that person so they know how they can help you. So another thing, another tip is the city, for the city of Seattle and really any public agency, we're out there talking about all the ideas that we have, all the things we want to do, all the projects that are going to be funded, all the things that are important to us as a public agency. And so pay attention to that. You're reading it in the newspaper. You can read it in their public budget that they all post online so that you can access it. You can listen to the mayor's budget speech. You can listen to Executive Constantine. There's many different ways to hear and listen and pay attention to what is the next big thing that a public agency is prepared to launch. One example was the navigation teams for the city of Seattle. I was there helping as they first launched and needed contractors. It's not a service consultant, but this example can go across the board with different types of things that the city might spend money on. The city made it very clear, we're going to start this navigation team program. We're going to need companies that can do this work for us. They made that known 6 months ahead of time, before the contract bids even went out the door. Watch for that type of information so that you can be prepared and at the front end of seeking that work. So Jessica, you do not need to, you don't have to have experience, but the strategy you're going to use is different. If you're a startup company, if you have never worked in the public sector, if you don't have a deep connection inside there, your strategy is going to be different. So you're going to start with a small contract. Your marketing strategy is give me a try. I haven't done work here. I don't have a deep bench. I don't have a long resume, but I'm good. And so give me a chance. I'll take a small contract. I'll do work that comes to me when you need someone immediately. I'll be there for you. So that's that's a niche that you have that you can fill, is doing the small stuff. An example, lost opportunity is, I had a consultant who came to me asking me to help them find a place, find a contract in the city. They wanted a contract. Never done public work, never done work with the city. Nobody knew who he was. So I lined him up and worked hard and gave up some points to people, my colleagues around the city, saying, give this guy a chance. Got him a contract opportunity. They were ready to sign him and he said, no, thank you, it's too small. the contract's too small for me. I just don't want to bother with something that small. What he gave up was not this small contract. He gave up the impression that he really did want to prove himself and be ready when the big one comes. So your strategy as a small startup company will be to go in and say, let me prove myself to you. Going back again to a couple of examples for tips was know what you specialize in, know what I want to buy. Know what kind of services I in the city or Sound Transit or King County or a private industry, know what they need. And it's very specific. I've had people come in and try and sell umbrellas to the city of Seattle. They're spending my time. They're asking me to think of who in the city wants to spend money on umbrellas, and then asking me to make that connection and do the sales pitch. Nobody wanted to buy umbrellas. That's happened numerous times. So make sure you've got a niche that your client, that agency, whether public or private, is really going to want. This is really true for A&E work. A&E work is very, very specialized. Some smaller A&E firms, sub-consultants believe that just their general resume is enough. But when you're working to team with a large A&E firm to get part of onto a larger contract, they are going to, A&E means architects and engineers, and it can include project management work for architectural, engineering, construction projects. If you're in that kind of work, you need to have an especially tailored resume that shows your experience to that very special niche that they need. You won't be substituted. Your experience has to be right on point. So don't get frustrated or impatient if they say to you, not this one, not this project, but maybe the next one, because it could well be waiting, being patient till your skills match up, and that will make you successful. Next slide.
I'm gonna have to stop and start again.
The next slide is when it pops up, I'm going to keep talking it through, is the first impression. So you need to, Regina talked to you about creating a really credible web presence. You want a website that people can go to look you up. They may only go there once, but when they go there, they're going to see that you're a credible firm. Even if you're a small startup firm, you're credible, that you have some structure to your business. As Regina said, please keep it up to date. I don't want to see the stuff that was from 10 years ago as much as I want to see what you're doing today or last year. Keep it neat, watch for typos. A typo is a killer. I may understand it when I'm meeting with you because I'm advocating for you when I was in that role, but boy, a typo to an interview team, a typo to someone who doesn't know you and is reading your market materials and they see a typo can blow it right out of the water. They're going to say, that's the quality of work, I don't need that. A third-party introduction. Regina gave you lots of resources, and Tabor is a critical resource because they can give you a third-party introduction. And the power of that is if Ollie or Tabor or someone from the Northwest Minority Supplier Development Council, if there is someone who can connect you, whose name your potential client is familiar with, that may be all you need to get them to open up that email or to accept your phone call. The city, I'll speak for the city because they're my former colleagues. The city's terrible about returning their calls. but I'm doing some consulting work right now. Everybody's terrible about returning calls. So you have to be persistent, you have to follow up, you have to use everything you can to keep reaching out to try and make that connection and use your patience. I don't want to hear that you tried me 3 times and I didn't return your call. Don't say that. Just be kind and patient and positive once you can make that connection. Next slide. So your performance is the most important piece. I've said that, I think, on a number of different slides I've gone. Your performance is incredibly important. You must perform. That first shot, if they haven't worked with you before, if you don't have a long resume with that particular public agency or that company, your performance is going to make or break your entire future with that client. They have to see you performing and they have to build trust and confidence in you. And you're a Black-owned firm in particular. Let's be honest and clear. You have to be above and beyond. You have to wow them. You have to be better than anything they've got in their back pocket. You have to be extra special. You've heard that over and over. You need to really absorb that in your heart and watch for ways as you are doing work to do the unexpected and to be special and to surprise them with your excellence. Data, research out there in the consultant industry tells us the #1 influence for repeat work is your performance on that first job. And I have seen it over and over again. If you perform, not only will they use you again, but they will recommend you to others. And as a startup firm or a small firm or a single shingle, that's a big deal. So I have another example. I have lots of examples of things that went well. I have some that didn't go so well. I have one that went incredibly well. It was a firm that was a startup firm, never done the work before, had never just started their business, had never done public work before, or private for that matter. They went in, got that first small contract and wowed them. Within 3 years, they were doing $1 million worth of business. They picked the right service. The city needed that service. They didn't have good alternatives, and they wowed them with their performance. 11 minutes left. Okay. I also had a friend who I fought ferociously to get them their opportunity. He went in. Finally, someone said, okay, I give up, I'll try him. And he made a critical error in the performance of his work that not only meant he lost that contract and he lost that client, but he lost the city across the board. Performance counts. Next slide. We've talked a little bit about not every job is for you. Be very comfortable, be very smart about when to turn down work. And you will do it very politely. You'll be very positive. You'll say, boy, it doesn't fit this time, next time it will. But you're looking for things where the client is particularly difficult. You think this is not a good fit, where they're nickel and diming you. Those are cues that this may not be the spot for you to start out your work. Next slide. We talked a little bit about this in terms of performance. So again, just emphasizing how important performance is. And this also goes to another comment that Jessica had made in the chat, which is How do you have time to do all the continuing education? How do you have time to do all the business development? You're swamped just trying to get the work done, and there's one of you or two of you. But even the largest of companies are saying the same thing. I have no time. There's over half of them statistically say in surveys they don't have enough time to do the kind of business development work that they wish to. So keeping a client that you have happy with your performance and keeping them connected to you is the least costly, easiest way for you to continue your work and continuing to build your resume. It's extremely costly for even the largest of firms to chase new work compared to the cost of keeping a client that you already have happy. Next slide. As I said, it is true. When we're sitting as public agents, people of color, particularly Black-owned businesses, you're starting from that little box instead of the tall one. If you've seen that graph of the 3 kids trying to watch baseball, it really is a difficult environment for you to be convincing people who don't know you and aren't familiar and are quite frankly coming with this silent implicit bias. The system will weed you out. Before that person even has a chance, the system is there to weed you out. Not purposefully, but it's the result of how the system works. So here's how you're going to work that system. Next slide. Next slide. I think we're close to the end. I want to go to the thing that's most important. So you're first of all, next slide. Next slide. This is it. This right here is how the system will keep you out. And you can play this game. You can win this game, but you need to pay attention. I cannot tell you how sad it is to have done all the work to be ready to submit your RFQ response and you get thrown out. And you will get thrown out. Every proposal, every consultant solicitation process, most everyone I've seen, we've lost at least one person. We've lost sometimes the best people. We've lost the most promising candidates because they didn't pay attention to this. It's the system of rules and regulations on how you write that RFQ. There's a ton of them. You got to read it. You've got to scrub it. You've got to memorize it. You have to double check it. The rules are as simple as how many pages can you use? What font style will they accept? What font size? What margins? All of these they are dead serious about as a public agency, and probably if you're competing in private agency. There are ways to argue, to appeal, yet 9 times out of 10, they will throw you out and you have no recourse. You will never make it to the interview. They are going to talk to you about don't add materials to the end of this. Or they may not. They may explicitly allow it. Know which the difference is for that RFQ that you are responding to. Use quality material. I have not seen this, but I recommend it. I don't see people doing this, and I don't know why they don't. So you're competing for work you haven't done before. Get copies of the last time that the public agency held a competition for the work you seek. Get copies of all the proposals sent in and the score sheets. Study them. It's going to show you, what does it look like? What does the most appealing one look like? How did they present themselves? What was their team look like? What was the argument? Where did they get the most points? Oh, you can look at the proposal and see, why did they get all the points possible for their concept? Study past proposal. Do I have a link? How do you get a copy of past proposals? You most likely will have to go to the public agency and use the magic words. I want a public disclosure request for the last time you competed for this type of work. The magic words are public disclosure request. Once you use those words, no matter who you say it to, they need to get you to the right person. It's their responsibility in that public agency to get you to the right person who can fulfill that request for you.
So can you guys hear me real quick? Nancy, this has been amazing. I just want to ask the audience, we have 3 minutes left. For those that are on the call, type in the Q&A if you have a question and you want to get to it, because I don't know if Nancy, if you're able to stay a little bit longer, and Regina, if you're able to stay for a couple of questions.
Absolutely.
Absolutely, yeah.
Let's just see if there's anyone who has a burning, urgent, must go, and I have a question to ask. Can you put it in the Q&A right now? Patricia's going to call it out if there's anything burning. And I'll not let you, Nancy, I'll just let you continue, but Patricia, be our voice of the burning questions if any come up.
I just have one
That
more
was your
story.
last slide, right? That was your last slide that I was showing.
Yeah, I can see
Okay, perfect, perfect. So I'm just showing you now. Perfect.
that. I have one more story about the how the system will weed you out, which is, I had a firm, they wanted this contract so bad. They prepared their proposal, yet they didn't pay attention to all the rules. And so what they did was they went too long, 10 pages max, they sent in 15. What the agency did, and this is in the city, but what the city did is they knocked the last 5 pages off and said, okay, instead of throwing out, we'll just look at the top 10 pages that you sent in. Pricing was in the last 5 pages. Their resumes were in the last 5 pages. They got a bunch of 0 points because nobody was willing, the agency couldn't look at the last 5 pages. Read the rules and be very careful about them. So those are the most important things I really wanted to touch on, and I'm very appreciative for your interest and your time. Thank you.
That was amazing. So Patricia asked me to put the last slide up. Was there a specific question about this slide, Patricia? And you're on mute.
No, I just wanted to make sure that was showing so that folks could see it, because I think it's I thought that was a very informative slide.
150%, I agree. Totally. We're going to come back now to Q&A. So we're just going to spotlight Nancy and Regina, and we're going to ask you ladies to share. Are there any final thoughts that you want to share? Regina, can you turn your camera back on for us? So I kind of have everyone here, and we'll let you two. Were there any questions, Patricia, that you wanted to ask, that anyone asked?
Yes, I did send them to you in chat, but would you like me to read them?
Sure. So question number 1, I see it. From Jessica, the question was, know your customer avatar. I guess, what does that mean? And then Jessica also asked, it sounds like startup companies like myself should not entertain public opportunities.
I did pause to, when she had 3 actually questions came up to try and address them. So Jessica, if you need more from me, I'm happy to throw that in, but I'm hoping I addressed that and Regina may have more thoughts.
No, it doesn't say at all that you shouldn't be in it. It just says that you need to be strategic. And I thought Nancy laid it out very well. Team up, think about strategic joint ventures, work with a senior small business that's been there a little while as their sub and learn and get into a mentoring relationship. But you can do it.
There's a couple here who we haven't heard from, and I would love to know what you think is your hardest challenge, the thing you're most concerned about, the thing you feel like you need some help with. If anyone wants to throw that up, Regina and I are here for a few more minutes.
So here, I'll read another question. How do we, the consultants and contractors of color, negotiate rates as subs and still get paid what we're worth? I feel like, you know, we're in a time where we have to lower our rates as opposed to getting a raise.
Mm-hmm.
And perhaps—
Well, it depends on the jurisdiction you're working with. If you're working in the public sector and you're working with the Washington State Department of Transportation and you're working in A&E, you have a particular hurdle to be dealing with the internal auditors and the consultant service offices. You have to prove to them what your direct rate is, that it's competitive, and that your overhead is what they will accept, and that the profit that you're using is acceptable. So, but if you're in construction, the bid process will save you. But more importantly, really get an idea of what the market is charging in your field. Know those salary differentials.
Yeah, there's two things I would suggest. One is the direct rates and indirect rates and stuff is particularly intense in terms of regulations around pricing. But if you're in a, I think, Jessica, you were saying that you're in finance or a softer, not an A&E, not an architect or an engineer. And so you may well be just setting your own rates without giving all the profit margin data behind it to the company. You don't want you don't want to underprice, and you don't want to be way out of the spectrum. You got to figure out what the spectrum of pricing is that that is expected in your industry. One of the ways to do it is to find out what the current consultants who do your kind of work are making. There's different ways to do that. One way is, of course, public disclosure request. But with the city of Seattle, we made the consultant contracts available to you online as well. So go in and look at the current contracts. You fuss around a little bit on the city of Seattle website, you can probably find it, or you'll find the person to call. Go in and look at the contract and see what the hourly rate is, see how they're paid, see how they price themselves, see how they structured their payment method. But don't undersell yourself, but don't shoot over high just because you need it in order to cover your overhead.
This has been absolutely amazing. I see another question here. And it said, great advice on continuing education. How do you find time, the education and running a business? I know you partially answered that, Nancy. Then the second part of the question was time management is a real challenge, you know, for us when you own your business, right? And I know you answered that question slightly, Nancy, and I wanted to come back to Regina, because one of the points you had on your slide was you didn't say mismanagement of time, you said malmanagement of time. Can you explain a little bit about that? Because I think that kind of applies to everyone in business. What did you mean, and what are your tips for success in managing time?
Be very clear how many hours that you are allocating to your day. You should get 8. Work hard at it, hours of sleep. Then you know what you've got left, because you need that stamina for the long run. And it means let's look at what we do. Every month, I look at how many hours did I spend on fun, voluntary, billable hours. And I look at those ratios and begin to ask the question, was there any way I could leverage? And my answer to the how do you do continuing education I said, time it up with and team it up with vacation time and weekends strategically. And then just make sure that you monitor how much time you're spending on Facebook and on social media. It will suck up hours of your time before you know it. On a weekly basis, you could have done a really meaningful training program. It's about discipline, and it's about monitoring the use of your time.
I love that.
Hmm.
I love that. Any other questions?
I did see one here. I am sorry, I will not say your name probably correctly. Sinead Tolan? You're a sub for the past 6 years. You're ready to form your own LLC. Is that so? You want to go in with a single shingle on your own, and resources and tips and the best certification to market yourself. Regina is going to be the expert in this, but the best certification to market yourself. Certifications are helpful, but they aren't going to make or break whether someone uses you. The city, I'll speak to the city, but I know all public agencies right now are paying attention to Black Lives Matter. The city purchasing and consultant service acquisition folks are beginning to understand that they need to be very supportive of Black-owned businesses. You don't have to be certified in the city in order to say I'm a Black-owned business, and they will stop and pay attention to that. But the rest of the question, I think Regina would be great to answer for you.
Right. I just wanted to make sure the question is what certifications you need the most.
Yeah, so the question
Pardon?
was, I've been a sub for the last 6 years. I am now ready to form my LLC. Do you have resources and tips? And then the second part of that was best certification to better market myself.
Oh yeah, I don't know if you're familiar with Procurement Technical Assistance Program, PTAC. Also attend a TABOR and a NAMAC meeting. If in 6 years, you probably have some partnerships. What you want to ask right now, in this environment of COVID, what do you do that is technologically based? And then team up with, get a mentor. You need to get somebody who's out there doing it, like Nancy, like myself, people who can at least give you the areas where we know there's some opportunities. The other things I mentioned in my area, are you holistically ready? Do you have the back office? Do you have any colleagues or subs that you've worked with that will give you the benefit of the doubt as you wait and move forward? I need to know a little more about your business plan and what successes you've had so we could either build on those or go to a new market. But many resources are available with Minority Business Development Administration that Lisa Womack is doing in Tacoma, and Tiffany Strog, I just mentioned, in PTAC. I would go to those two organizations just for a holistic discussion about your area. And then I'd zero in on people that you know who are interested in helping you, like Nancy and myself.
I love that. I'm looking at these questions, and more so what I see is a lot of thank yous. You guys are amazing. Great information from both panelists. I see a lot of affirmations. So let me just take a moment, unless Patricia, you call out any other questions that you see, or any of you see any new chapter or something that I may have missed. This has been amazing.
I'd like just one more question, just last question about would be okay. And I think it's directed at Regina. What are your thoughts about networking in the COVID environment with Zoom meetings and social distancing?
Great question.
It's a wonderful, my speaker is still on, right?
Yes.
It's a wonderful opportunity to understand how to use the virtual world. If you understand that well and really take some time and know how you want to look on screen and what's behind you and what's in front of you so you can read it while you're talking. And then if you don't know, team up with someone, make sure that there's someone who operates it. It's a great opportunity because most of the virtual platforms tell you who's on the daggone thing. So you know the individuals you're talking to, you can get back to them. You can also take the time to show your slide and also talk to them with the split screen as they did so well today. The only thing else that you want to do is you have to do some due diligence follow-up with personal phone calls so that you can make sure that everything was understood. So if you're training using this platform, you need to do pre and post phone calling. If you're trying to pitch something that you're doing, just make sure it's crisp and not too many items on the slide. The mind cannot absorb too much too soon and retain it all. That's just the tip of the iceberg, but it's going in the right direction, I think.
I would say this fabulous COVID environment in terms of your ability to market. Do not let COVID discourage you. This is a great time for you to be marketing and getting your name and your face and your business out there. The reason is twofold. One is people are easier to get right now. So if you're trying to reach someone in a public agency, private agent, they're at their house or at their desk, they're ready for a phone call or a Zoom meeting. And the second thing is, instead of taking 2 hours to commute to drive out, sit in a lobby, wait to be called in, and finally get in front of the person for 10 minutes, you get to Zoom with them. And in the questions that we had about how do you have time to do all this, how's the time management, this is a much more efficient way to get your face in front of someone. So do not be discouraged using during this environment.
Absolutely.
Well,
but you do have to, let me just say, you do have to understand, practice with your iPhone reverse, how you look on screen. It can be so distracting if they're zeroed in on your nose, for instance, because you don't have your camera in the right position, or that if you're not sure about your background. I took my Hawaiian trip background because I like it, but more importantly, because I'm not sure what fell out of place behind me. Since the last time I was sitting there, you know, I said, enough of this. Let that be no problem. There are other less busy backgrounds, but you can get one already in place.
But let them see your face. Don't,
yes, that's important.
Start the video. Don't try and do it just because seeing your face is part of them getting to be familiar with you.
Yes.
What I love about both of you is, first of all, you're just personality plus. You're tons of valuable information, but you're keeping it real. I mean, Nancy, your first slide was the struggle is real, and then I do see a question here from someone talking about how fair do you feel the procurement process is for minority contractors? You know, do you feel that procurement officers have their favorites? Right, we talked about that a little bit, but this idea of how do you get beyond being, you know, not being a favorite, not being known, getting your foot in the door? I mean, do you expect someone else to use their creds and their credibility to get you in? You know, I mean, for people who don't even know who to start or where to start.
Yeah, strategic introductions are critical. I want to introduce Bob to you because I've worked with him. I feel his spirit. And then would you keep me posted how it went? You say to the person you introduced, then you call back the person you introduced and then, well, how did he do? And where could he have been tighter? You need supportive advocates that have some street cred and some industry cred that they're willing to share.
I love it. Nancy, any final thoughts as we close out? Since you said the struggle is real, you guys just gave us some real tips. Both of you gave some amazing strategies around what we can do to be more successful. So thank you so much. This recording will become an archive of amazing information. Any final words that you want to share?
Please be patient, be positive, be warm and gracious, not only when you're doing work for them, but when you're hunting down the work. And with your patience, you can get there. I've seen people see people starting very small firms, showing themselves up, and they get there. So be patient, use your resources, use your advocates thoughtfully with patience and with grace, and you will get there.
I love it.
That's true. Be blessed, be safe, and remember what Beyonce said, the best revenge is get that paper. Be gracious.
Well, we're going to end on that note. Get that paper. Thank you so much, ladies. This has been
Thank
such
you.
an honor, such a blessing, and we look forward to having you back
Thank you so
for
much.
additional tips. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you all for joining us.